To create a pivot table, you need a dataset that is structured in a fairly specific way. This video discusses the required structure. Actually, the purpose of pivot tables provides a clue to the way your dataset should be set up. This purpose is almost always to break down numeric variables by one or more categorical variables. Therefore, it makes sense that your dataset should be a collection of numeric and categorical variables, arranged in adjacent columns. The dataset you see here is typical, and it is used for illustration in many later videos in this series. The context is of customer purchases from the fictional YouSave online retail store. Each row corresponds to a customer purchase. It has information about the date and time of the purchase, characteristics of the customer, and numeric information about the purchase. There are 4,000 purchases, and I have split the screen so that you can see the last few rows. A word about terminology is in order. Each row in this type of dataset is usually called a record, although you might also hear the term observation. This dataset has 4,000 records. Similarly, each column is usually called a field, although you might also hear the term variable or attribute. This dataset has 10 fields. Of these, 5 are clearly categorical because they contain text, and 4 are clearly numeric. The other field is a date field, and as you will see in the pivot table videos, it acts more like a categorical field. The terms fields and records come from relational database terminology, but they, especially fields, have become part of pivot table terminology as well. This is the typical structure required for creating pivot tables: a rectangular range of data with no blank rows or columns, with records in rows and fields in columns, and with descriptive field labels in the top row. If your dataset is not structured like this, and many datasets are not, then you need to manipulate it to get it into this form. Note that your dataset can contain some blank cells, but you should fill them in if possible. Here is a data structure you often see. The year and month fields have blanks, but it's clear what their values should be. Before creating a pivot table, these values should be filled in. There's a nice Excel trick you can use here. It's explained in the text box, but I'll walk you through it. First, select the range of years and months, including the blanks. Second, press the F5 key to bring up the Go To dialog box. Click Special, and then Blanks, and click OK. Note that A3 is now the active cell. Now create a copyable formula by typing an equal sign and then pressing the up arrow. Then press Ctrl-Enter, both keys at once, to enter the formula into all the blank cells. Then you can check the formulas to understand what you've just done. Each blank equals the value above it. The blank cells in the total sales column are more problematic. They cause two potential problems for pivot tables. First, a pivot table treats the total sales field as categorical just because of the two blanks. Second, if you summarize total sales in a pivot table by summing or averaging, it treats the blanks as zeros. If these two data values are really missing, you might not be able to fill them in any meaningful way, but you should at least be aware of the consequences for pivot tables. I will finish this video with an example of a common but bad dataset structure, at least for pivot tables. You see this on the left, where monthly sales are listed in a table. This is a compact way to store the data, but it won't lead to useful pivot tables. The better design is shown on the right, where each month-region combination gets its own row. This design can then be used in a pivot table to break down sales by month or region.